It's on.
Alright. It is April 6th at 7 p.m. and I will call the Utilities Committee meeting to order. We have Mr. Richard here with us. Ms. Durbin is absent because of a medical condition, so.
I'll make a motion to excuse Ms. Durbin from the committee meeting tonight.
I'll second that motion. And then we'll need an approval of the minutes from the previous meeting.
Okay, I've looked at it. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the March 2nd meeting.
And I'll second that. And then an approval of tonight's agenda as published.
Okay, I will make that motion also.
And I'll second that. So we can go right into the discussion items. The first discussion item is the sewer rate discussion. This is something that was kind of hinted at in the last meeting or so, that we were going to start discussing the sewage rates and how we can look at those to start operating out of the negative and into, at least an operation cost for the sewage rates. So Nikki or Tom, do you want to talk about the attachment here that we have with the proposed rates?
Yeah, I think we can use that as a guide. If I could, Kara, I'd like to start by saying this, inevitably, this becomes the mayor's sewer increase. So I don't look at it that way. And I think we're probably a meeting or two away from, maybe another meeting away from going to the council floor, but I think that if you vote this out tonight, I love everything you say, Mayor, you get the council, there's gonna be a lot of questions, and I think they'll inevitably be sniping, if not ambushing, that could happen. And want to try to minimize that and avoid it. Carrie said one thing that I wanted to pick up on about, so what I passed out is the revenue and for 603, and now the expenses for 603 as in this year's budget. The point that I think is important to make is that total revenue for 603 is on the second page. The 202 page in the back, I'm sorry. And that is 2.2 million. That's total revenue, including 686,000 that we intend to borrow. Okay. The other number that's important to look at would be the user charges that we're talking about needing to address. And there we only project 1.5 million. So those are two key numbers. We're borrowing the money that we need for debt service. I said 686, it says 688. I'm off a little bit on that. But the other one then that I went ahead and had printed out is revenue, is our expenditures. And you can see on page 505, to go from back to front, you can see that the total budget exceeds the revenue. Okay, that 2394 does not balance up with the 2226. Okay, so there's operating deficit, structural deficit, call it what you want, but that's in the 22 budget. So we knew that, I think last fall, in November, December when we passed it, I think most people realized that that was going to be out of kilter. Okay, today I talked with the auditor and to talk about the other part of this that's real important, and that is the fund balance. And while they haven't reconciled all the way to the end last year, Brian said that a number that we could use is that cash position is what was in the budget at the end of the year last year. So, in a second, I'll pull that up. So at the end of last year, we're showing that we had 1.5 million in the sewer fund. Okay. So, we're gonna draw down at least 100,000. Okay. And so what I wanna point that out because, we're gonna get real close to that 3-month operating.
That was gonna be my question, yeah.
So we wanna, that's kind of where I wanna start, how we came into this year, okay? There's some things as this year's unfolded that increase the expense line. It sounds like a lot, it is a lot, but at least by another 100,000. And that is 2, not totally unexpected retirements, but 2 retirements for which severance pay wasn't included in the budget. 2 long-time employees, better employees, the kind of quote-unquote hard to replace employees. 2 of them are going out mid-year. So they'll have we'll have to come up with additional money, probably out of the unappropriated shrinking fund balance. So that's kind of the picture where we're at now. That gets to the proposed rate changes. And I think what I want to say about that, just and then I'll take a breath or two, is that what we're suggesting is that we go back to what was a long-standing, meaning decades, tradition or convention, more of a convention, and that is that water rates and sewer rates would be the same. Okay. Last year, we raised water rates up, I'd say parenthetically, not enough, but that's not what we're here to discuss tonight. But, and so that's really what this proposal attempts to do, or does, recommendation. I expect you all to have to look at it. You didn't have days to look at it, you're just seeing it, and so, although there is an ordinance, and it could get voted on to the agenda next Tuesday, I'm not sure that's the best course. So I didn't mean to, Julie went and prepped this ordinance because earlier in the day, I thought, probably, the more I went through all of this, the more I realized there's a lot of process.
Right.
So, anyway.
Well, and that's, yeah, I think that, given the fact that we just saw this material, even though being on the utility committee, from last year,
Right.
we kind of had some indicators and indications from your office as well as just overall discussion about it. Of course, we're now in another dynamic of what's going on overall with all utilities anywhere in the country. So, I would not recommend that we do anything with this tonight.
Well, you know.
But I mean, the idea that at least that way we get a chance to go through it and, mull it over, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, I think the features worth noting, and that's like, if we left in 20 minutes, I didn't mention that, I'd feel bad about it, is that there's a proposal, in the proposal, there's a minimum sewer charge, as there is with water. If you have a water account, you have a water meter, you get $7.51 whether you use a unit of water or not. without getting too far off in the water. When you use a unit of water, then you pay that customer care. We're trying to institute and have a fair amount of this need for revenue to come from the institution of a $7.51, I guess, customer charge. I expect to hear.
Well, that would be the, just like with the water, you have, I forget the breakout point for water, it's 0 to
Yeah,
whatever it is.
this year.
That window, is usually, for lack of a better term, necessary, shows up. And so there is a charge out there on the water end of it. But again, thinking broader is the fact, okay, that's not to say that there's actually not water being used, it just doesn't.
It hasn't hit that.
Correct,
one
so
unit.
there's actually water being used, so this would, the charge on the sewer side would cover the fact that that water used is going to be flushed down the toilet, whatever it is.
This is the kind of stuff that gets you in trouble, sort of a rough number. But it costs, we were just working on this, about $350 per account to meter and bill. Whether you use a lot or barely anything.
Right.
That's the metering and billing cost all rolled up, divided by the number of accounts, divided by, the per month. So that's about what we're looking at. We don't recover anything from the customers at the zero sewer. But we go out and read a water meter, or in limited cases, a sewer only meter. So there'll be a discussion about recovering our overhead through that first unit customer charge. I guarantee you, I think people will hear both, all council members who have an open ear will hear both sides of that. This is really rough on low water users. Some sort of a small d democratic argument for having certain people not pay anything for the charge of metering and billing. It honestly doesn't cost any more to bill. I think for one of our largest customers is Avita. To send them a bill and to meter them doesn't cost any more than a senior living alone in a small single family home. So that that'll be an equity argument. I can sing out of, or talk out of both sides of my mouth on that. I can see both sides of it. But what we're trying to, I want to focus in on is equitable and efficient way to raise some more money. Because we're out of balance. That's kind of where I started. So there's a couple more things that aren't going to get done here that for people who think, well, this is just far too much, you got to do less than that. But all this will do is bring us into alignment in our operating side. It'll be pretty close. I think, but for this $100,000 severance payout, unexpected, unbudgeted, this rate recommendation, this idea would be sufficient. But things that aren't getting paid. You'll remember that we decided in the budget that was passed not to have the utilities pay their indirect costs. So I think 75, 80 grand on each water and sewer. And then the other thing that's not in the budget, as they say, or accounted for, is the electric use in those two utilities. So it's, some people would say, well, it's just taken out of one pocket and putting in the other. Other people would use the Rob Peter to pay Paul. Other people would say strict fund accounting probably says you should pay for your own electric. So it's set up that way because if you will, the budget didn't work if you had those, another 160,000.
Right.
So if you think we're 100 and some off out of kilter and 603, if you add another 160, you're like, wow.
Well,
So that got cut, and it's like, how do we make this, you know, how do we get a budget done late last year? And so that's when those ideas, I don't think they're particularly good ones. I mean, what happens is the electric fund is, you know, is shorted, if you will, 160 grand.
Right.
It's on a $10 million roughly revenue base, so it's maybe doesn't 100,000 in water, 100,000 in sewer. You can see is a lot bigger impact because the revenue and expense. Giving you too much minutia.
Well, that was some of my questions, was going to be real quick. And you know, I know some out there are going to say, well, are we just raising it, just to raise it, so to speak, and along those thought process, but obviously, you know, if we're just, that's what was my question, is this going to get us where we need to be operational?
Yeah, the answer to that question is, had we done it when the consultant told us to do it, it'd be a better picture.
Yeah.
But Mike will recall, I don't think you joined council yet, but there was in early 20, about what would be 2 years ago, there was a rate study done, and like most rate studies, I hate everything about it. You know, it's too much, and this and that. And we as the service director has the statutory authority, responsibility for setting water rates. So I say we, the administration, or Nikki and I, sat on increasing water rates through 2020. Council didn't want to raise sewer rates, and we didn't want to create this water rates higher than sewer rates. And last year, in the committee, the idea of raising sewer rates it just wasn't going to get discussed. And so that puts us 2 years behind.
Right.
So when you say, well, is this enough? Is this too much? Well, it's probably just about right, but it's 2 years, 20 months behind in collecting that increased revenue.
Well, even to take my point beyond that is the dynamic that, we're, again, as you indicated, we've been very, very, in many cases, maybe too frugal in the sense of being mindful of what we actually need to be able to furnish good services to all the folks in the community. But again, and that was the thing back then even, didn't know about, that was the beginning of the pandemic stuff and then now we have all these other dynamics that have
Well, I get goofed on for saying this, but it's really true. The city government, council, and administration, on these issues, if we're guilty of anything, it's keeping rates too low. We've underfunded, and again, that'll get a big belly laugh from people. It's like, no, man, that's the reason that the critics rat-a-tat-tat about the reservoirs, rat-a-tat-tat about the common lateral sewers, rat-a-tat-tat about the railroad street plant, et cetera, is because we haven't historically raised enough money to address those things. Now we're kind of behind the curve or behind the 8 ball. There's a bit of reckoning.
Right.
So, excuse me, these are some things it doesn't do. It doesn't correct that indirect cost, or that we aren't going to be able to pay for our utilities with this increase. They will be able to hopefully avoid most of the erosion of the fund balance. Something else that it won't do is there's no money in there to do anything more than roll those two big notes that are in here, that 688 number. That's the lift station and the screw pump.
Yeah.
At some point, I hope it's this year, at some point we're gonna have to look at how to address that.
What is the current run on those anyway?
Well, I think we got a quote for the bond council let us know that she went out and got quotes, and the 1.5% is what was the lowest bidder, and I think it was one of those local regional banks that had the best price on it. So the cost of, it's like we got lured into it. You know, we could roll the debt, just pay a little bit of interest, but we're getting to a point with both those that we're gonna have to start to pay those down.
I was gonna say, you get dangerous when you
Yeah,
start.
and this doesn't, this proposed thing to start as a use of starting point, it doesn't have a pathway to retire that debt. Not a good thing, not a good thing.
Yeah.
So there isn't enough money to do that. And so this is as we discuss it, there may be some people that say, well, if you're gonna have to raise it again to be able to come up with a way to pay it down, then maybe you should raise them more. So I'll probably have tomatoes thrown at them in case they were to say that. I've heard floating around, I'm sorry to monologue so much. I've heard floating around among council members, I think it's just maybe brainstorming, the idea of using general fund dollars to pay down or to mitigate some of these sewer water rate increases. It'd work. You're allowed to do it, but if you look over the horizon and you share a concern about high inflation for a couple of years, where the interest rates aren't going to catch up, we'll make it a little more interesting. But high inflation, and then a recession, I don't know if drawing down kind of in any unlimited way the general fund surplus is we should think carefully about doing it.
Well, the other thing about that, I'm on the face of it, I'm not really in favor of that, because if this was a situation where it was a one-shot deal, okay, we've got this situation, we do it, and it's done. It's one thing. But this is not a one-and-done type of thing. This is a cumulative that will continue to roll along. So
Yeah.
that's a dangerous precedent that you set yourself when you start taking stuff out of the general fund and end up start depleting that to the point where suddenly now you're concerned about if you've got enough to do some of the stuff that needs to be done as a community in the whole. Again, if it was one and done type of thing, I think personally it would be a different story for me. But as far as a dynamic of an ongoing thing, and most utilities companies, they don't do that. I mean, unless they have specific projects, that's one thing.
I would just jump in by saying that the same sort of hesitation and this real, there's only 7 votes, so the vote counting I would say that you've got a similar dynamic with this as you do with the PCA. And the thing that's why we need to take a while, because people who would want to say they're doing good by the utility or they're protecting the small customer, that we need to have a little bit of a discussion on that. I mean, we've putzed around in the PCA. Having said that, we've been really slow on the PCA. And it's,
which I find.
It's less than a gallon of milk, and you can get 3/4 a gallon of gas for the month, the increase over the month on the 1,000 person kilowatt.
Right.
1,000 kilowatt residence or business. That's not very much at all. And So I expect there's gonna be pushback, it's gonna be a close vote. And the only last is that the longer we wait, trying to get the consensus built or people to understand it a little more clearly so they can explain their vote or explain what council's doing, the less it's gonna raise this year. And I think, we got that part, you know. So the sooner we can get to it, maybe effective in July, maybe we split the year, you know, then half the money we expect to collect, and only collect half the money. So that's why if we get the structural deficit fixed by in 6 months, I think that would be a big first step.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Sorry to write more.
Lot of stuff. I just think it's real complicated, and there's I've no appetite to raise any money more than absolutely necessary, and I'm definitely not in the remember, like those of us who had kids and stuff, or nieces and nephews, like the airplane thing you do with the spoon. I'm not gonna like fly the spoon around to get people to take a bite. I mean, it's not like, let's everybody do some homework and then have a spirited but logical discussion. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
So I think if you were to vote this out and put it on the agenda Tuesday night, it would be the pouring kerosene on the fire or something. You got a close vote on the PCA. And I suspect some conversation.
I have a couple questions if I can.
Yeah, I got one more thing to say. As far as like, if you vote no, I really think you owe it. This is a generalized message to people in the audience, but not here. If you vote no on something, you really ought to explain it to the rest of the folks, because it makes it sound, it would appear, and if I was a yes, but I wouldn't let it happen to me. I won't let it happen from my position. But like, by voting no, you're a good person, and all these people voting yes are bad. That is not gonna, I don't think anyone should sit still for that. I think it's, if we don't do it, then what's the alternative? And I don't want to raise rates. Well, then, hell, it'd be 7-0 if we had a vote on that. That's not what the vote is. All right, thank you. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Go ahead.
These reports say as of January through the end of April, that the actuals that are pulled from the revenue and expenses, are those through today, or it's through today? And have you received payments for April already?
April bills went out.
It's on there. It's real puny if you look on there. I think it's a few $100s. There's about 12 people that rush up there the first of the month. As soon as they're there, get Social Security the first of the month, pay their utility bill, and then.
Okay.
So there is a little bit of revenue. What is the number of it?
I think I just got my bill today.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering. I think a few of them went out. I don't know how many are paid. How many customers?
There it is on one of one, $6,100. Those are those people that always, like, I'm sure they made their monthly tithe. Tithe to the city and tithe to the church. 6,100 is what we collected. Hell, that could be from last month. You'd have to know. You'd think they were the good guys and gals paying early. That could be 6,100 to keep them from being shut off. Received this month.
Sure.
Anyway, sorry.
How many customers use less than 1 unit? Do you know?
It varies every month, Eric, because if we pull a report this month of zeros, next month they may use the extra 100 units to pop them over to the 1 unit. So every month it sort of fluctuates.
Is there an average?
I don't know if I can even.
We had like, I'll just give you a number. When recently, when the EPA was asking about all the zero read meters, we pulled all the zero reads and went through them. There are about 300
I
of
think
them.
it was about 300 residential,
Okay.
but,
And,
you know, that,
yeah,
to them, they were looking for malfunctioning meters, but zero doesn't mean malfunctioning, it just means possibly they didn't use 750 gallons of water.
so everyone will, people who will contact you on that one, I know that because we heard from, I can think of a woman in particular on South Street, snowbirds. I just don't think that's right. I wasn't there all winter and you're gonna charge me $7 a month for, yeah, because like we had to come out to read the meter. Well, we could tell you we weren't gonna be there. It's, oh my God, it's kind of Mayberry-ish, but we're not that small. So we gotta go out and read the meters whether you're
They
in
shut their-
South Carolina or not. So they have a zero read. No, they don't wanna have their account shut up
Right.
and turn back on. So we know from that experience, people, that's a group that will complain that if you snapshot within a month, let me see your dead meters there, Mr. Richard. Okay, well, this is what we got for January. You're gonna have a lot of zero reads because they're down in their southern home, if you will, or on a month vacation and stuff. So like a rule of thumb, maybe 300 read zero.
Okay.
And we found that most of those were smaller commercial operations. And then residential, low volume users.
Okay. Just trying to
Yeah.
understand if that's gonna, how much, you know, what that's gonna get us, you know, if what kind of impact that's gonna make, so that helps with that, I guess.
Yeah, 7,300 is $2,100 a month.
Right.
Not a lot, but the number looks better when you multiply it times 12.
They all do.
So anyway, that's,
Do you know what the average life of the needed repairs will be once they're done?
on the big level, I don't know for
Right.
sure. I think a good way to answer it, it was about 20 years ago that they upgraded Railroad Street. So I think some of the stuff we're getting into at the reservoir has been on a more deferred maintenance basis for maybe longer than that.
Okay.
So I think we'll get 20 years out of this. And we would be borrowing a lot of money to become compliant, but for ARPA dollars.
Would you look at paying it down in half of that time or faster, or at that pace, or what were your thoughts on?
On the new stuff,
Mhm.
I think right now, I think we'll have those covered by ARPA dollars. Either ours, the city's allocation, or what I like to call our share of the county's allocation. But you used the word dynamic a couple times. I mean, it is the infrastructure, pricing, who can afford what that's really dynamic.
Yeah.
The price is going up on some of the other communities in the county that we're gonna do, where you're going tomorrow, where they were gonna do big projects. That blew up on them huge, like $1 million. This is a utility, so it's kind of relevant. Our issue 1 project went from 600 to 760,000 in the estimate. Wow. So I'm not sure, we're expecting some increase back to water at Railroad Street on the estimates that we have, the roughly $1 million, but I think if we use our allocation, our recovery dollar allocation to cities, we'll probably be able to cover that.
And the last question I have is based on the industry that we have here, do you believe that the cost to treat 1 unit of the sewer that's created from 1 unit of water, is the cost the same to treat a residential unit as it is a commercial unit?
That's a neat question, Eric. We didn't when we had the rate study done, we didn't do a cost of service study. So I can't really answer that. You know, how much more does it cost to serve a large customer on the water or sewer side versus, 18 residential? It's a good question. We've not looked at it that way. The rate study was more revenue, projected expenses, and revenue necessary to cover those expenses. It wasn't trying to determine what you're saying, the cost of a residential versus an uptown commercial, whatever. The electric studies, when we do those, we probably won't get out of these terms in office without having to at least talk about a new electric rate study. Because that's what that cost adjuster shows you, that your rates aren't raising enough money. We do look at that, or we don't. We pay a consultant to look at the cost of serving the hospital, Coverts, and Kara's house, and my house, and H&R Block. So that is looked at, but it's really not part of either in the allocation of all the costs or at the treatment plant. We used to have a lot of industries we were pretty heavy into pre-treatment. Those days seem to be gone. All the plating companies and all those companies had heavy pre-treating loads.
Right, yeah, it's changed a lot. Yep. Those are the questions that I have.
Yeah, that's a neat question from a waste management point of view. That's not meant to be a company's test, but it is about solid waste management and management. Anyway.
So whenever we're looking at this sheet with the black and red on it, the red is the new rate. And whenever we're looking at the sewer, so now everyone will get that $7.51 minimum charge. And then I see that it says 1-1. So is the first unit of water used $10.33, and then the units after that $7.24 per unit?
Yes.
Okay. So like at my house, we just use 2 units of water. So then my bill would now be $28 as opposed to $8.50.
You won't get the minimum charge, Carrie. So your bill, if you use 2 units of water, your new sewer bill would be $17.57 instead of, it would go up basically $9.
Okay. And for families that use more than 2 units, that would not be as, it would still be, it would be, honestly. How many units does an average family use?
I think the rule of thumb, and I don't think this will change, all the finance rules of thumb are all thrown out the window, interest rates. A person per unit. So the family of 4, there's a lot of those at 4. Cliche is if 2 of those 4 are teenagers, then you probably don't be surprised if you're at a 5.
So then that would be, for a family of 4, $32 a month for sewage. That doesn't seem that bad.
It is, I don't think so either. So we'll agree. There'll be 2 of us in the whole city that will agree. Alt and O'Leary agree. It doesn't seem too bad. And then it'll be, yeah, for them it isn't too bad. But I think this a lot, say it almost as often. Our mistake was holding the rates down, because nobody says, oh, that was really great. Those guys kept the rates down.
Yeah.
But you under collect, and then you get a little bit of a boomerang effect where you have to, make up for that.
Well, and to piggyback on that too is if say, for example, we throw all this out.
Right.
Okay, and don't do anything about it. The next step is going to be, okay, the balance is down to where it's critical now. We have to raise it. So instead of raising it, in this case, approximately $6 difference, you're going to see $15 or $20.
Yeah, and
And
the short,
that's the danger.
I don't want, yeah, I would agree with you, that what you'll see in this, before that happens, is advancing money out of the general fund to be able to pay bills out of the sewer or water, they could both.
Right.
And then it's like, well, what good does that do? You're gonna have to pay back the advance and this operating deficits, right? It's hard to cast yourself as the guy in the gal in the white horse raising people's rates, but
The
it's.
thing, I want to make sure that people, we all live here in the city.
Yeah.
This affects us just as much as anybody else that's in the city. And obviously, we've tried to avoid, matter of fact, this is technically a avoidance to some extent because it's just getting what we absolutely have to have
Right.
in that regard. So to, in my opinion, for somebody to be out there saying, well, they're gonna raise the rates like huge and all this other stuff. Well, no, we're trying to be mindful of everybody, and especially during these times, because that's gonna be an argument too, I'm sure. But again, yeah, I mean, I'm gonna join your bandwagon there, so.
Just take a look at it. I'm not sure like I laid out, like the customer charge, if like, oh, that's too high or whatever. I think the alternative is to go in and bump some other classes or add to some of the other categories a few pennies here and there. So shift the cost away from the lower users. I think it's necessarily low, all of them are low income, they're low water users or low sewer users. But it still costs. The meter person comes by and the billing clerk bills it, and we send it, and then we have, we have printing and mailing costs, all that stuff's the same whether you're using water or not.
Okay.
Oh, well, people are either agreeing, hating it, or probably somewhere in between. I expect it'll be, I don't know, mid-May. If we get this passed so that it can go into effect July 1st, because I don't think there'll be 5 votes. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm giving people who looking for a loophole to vote no on. There it is. He said I could vote no, but you probably don't have the 5 votes for an emergency. It's going to lag out 30 days. So the effective date will have to be probably July 1st. That's kind of what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
I wish it wasn't.
And so I guess this is just another pretty simple question, but so now, like I'm looking at my bill right now from last month.
Yeah.
So my water bill last month was $17.57. So then in the future, my sewer rate would just match that.
Yeah, that's
So my sewer was $8.50 and my water is $17.57. So then my water and sewer rate would just match.
Yes.
Yeah, so
And it's $9 more, and
And I think that,
it's like a meal at McDonald's, or it's a couple Happy Meals. I don't know how you want to look at it.
I think we can look at it based on water and sewer bills from other communities that are, like, that's only $25 for water and sewer. And I feel like that for only 2 people live in my house and big giant dogs, but I mean, that just doesn't seem like.
If you had 3 people, you'd probably have a 3 that would bump up to a 4 back and forth. You don't have that information.
Right.
It's very reasonable. I'm not sure how dated our stuff is.
And I know in the past, like if you fill up your swimming pool, you can call, and will that, you'll still be able to tell it. It's like one big credit.
that's why, that way you don't get
You don't pay any
sewer
sewer.
in there.
Yeah, so that one. But Matt, I think actually I have to say this, Smiley, he loves to do that kind of stuff. I'll check with him tomorrow when I see him. Say, but in terms of data collection. And I was serious last night when Palmer had that's a really good summary of some options there. So I do believe if you look at other communities, you have to drill down a little bit. If a community has just put in a new sewer plant, has a big debt load, then, you know, that's
gonna be,
yeah, we want to make sure they're in ours because we'll compare favorably. But yeah, you know, you try to look at similar communities,
right.
and so I don't know. I think that would help. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
We should try to do that.
I think so. 'Cause
I think you should have your staff do that.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that would be kind of neat
Jeez.
to look at. Just
Julie
because,
didn't even peek her head
well,
up.
in so many places, and you don't get all your bills on one bill, so I feel like sometimes it's hard to stomach the everything together bill, but if we look at it separately, maybe based on other communities, that might be helpful.
Yeah, it is.
As well.
Yeah, it plays into to people complaining about being too high. Because you hear, I got my electric bill, but now that'll be sloughed off on the sewer rates. Yeah, your electric didn't go up. Yes, it did. It went up $10. $9.07, but I don't know if we'll, excuse me, ever get away from that confusion entirely. But yeah, I don't, so if you were to put the two together, it's gonna be, we're in your pocket for probably about $12 to $13 more a month. Because the 1,000 kilowatt user is $370 a month, and then this $9.
Do you know how many customers use the final three categories, the 15 and 70 and 82?
No, top of our head.
At the end of the period, the large fire users toward the end of the day, I'll say maybe 50
And for all three categories combined?
for the big ones, yeah. It was not it was a one-page list.
Yeah, so that's a hearing where we did the, updated the rates, a few years back. We had a study and stuff, and that was kind of the same number that the large users, which was those categories, encompassed.
Yeah, the schools are kind of I don't know if
We're 3/4 of the way down.
yeah, they have multiple meters apparently, and I'm all on one big meter, so I don't know. I doubt if that would cause them to change that. Anyways, they're not, there's no great surprises in those large numbers. Should be a lot tougher if we had like a major water user from an ag point of view, or an industry that used a lot of water. We don't have that in our kind of user base anymore. Anyway, I hope this is a good start, and
Oh, I think so.
I think we gotta get some, see where we're at in relevant neighboring communities. I mean, some people say, well, I don't care, I don't live there, and that probably is the group of our customers that are just not gonna please, they're gonna be upset. I wish it wasn't that way, but.
Well, is there anything else, we're gonna move on to the next?
Yeah, what is the next, there was another item.
There is,
Sorry.
it's the ordinance authorizing safety service record to enter into an agreement with PPD Group for professional engineering services.
It's a straightforward, let's see. There is a exemption in Ohio law to competitively bidding, engineering as a list of professional services. We intend to use the federal ARPA dollars to pay for what they're gonna design. So we sort of backed up, and after very early this year, we were talking to a couple of engineering firms trying to assess which one we would go with. Decision was made to use ARPA funds to actually get the construction. The commissioner said, yeah, here's $1 million for you guys. Then we realized we ought to go through a more competitive selection process for the engineering. So we did an RFQ, request for qualifications, got 5 or 6 different, I'll stop at 5 different engineering proposals for qualifications. And these guys were selected out of that. This company's guys, pretty informal. And so that's We don't have to bid the services, but for the contract, if you look in there's 115 or something in it. So that's definitely above the 50,000, so we want to bring the authorization to go enter into that contract.
Right.
So that's what that is.
And this would give us a good plan of exactly what we need to do for all these listed things.
Yeah, we weren't terribly satisfied with the previous consultant. We're looking at doing less of our engineering services stuff through the local engineering firm. And increasingly look at, although we haven't designated them as the city engineer, that's still McKeever and Associates, but that would bring our electrical engineering consultants, the roadway people who helped us the last couple of projects, and the water people all under one engineering firm. I think that's a step forward. So that's what that is. No, I know for sure that Thomas will be talking to you in, I think the next council meeting about taking this professional assistance and adding some professional assistance to tackle the regulatory issues or hurdles that we're going through. This is just engineering. So.
And I know this will be a question that comes up, so has there been an engineering study recently on these same things?
Yeah.
That the city's already paid for?
No, there isn't. There was a general plan that was put together that included some of those elements and some other ones. It had ozone on an experimental basis, and it had a thing called nanofiltration, which those we don't intend to do. We're not asking them to do that. We're asking them to replace. We can see it.
Yeah.
Those are the 4 or 5 areas that are that we have notice of violation that we're working to correct. The NOVs, I think. Yeah.
I think that this is a good start to get going on those deficiencies that were noted, so that way we can get a good plan. And especially if this seems like a good group that can get all of it together at once. How long does it take to do all these different?
I think there's a proposal, start designing in 22 with construction completed by the end of 23.
Well, that's fast.
It's what we're
It's gonna be
hoping.
a long year and a half.
Yeah, the key thing is, can we get it to market and get the work done during the colder weather months, colder winter months. Our consumption's a little bit less, so we would have, hopefully more flexibility to shut down one clarifier, get it cleaned, repaired. That's really the big part of it. The other stuff will be easy to design.
Well, do you have any questions, Mike?
No, it's pretty self-explanatory, and like it's already been mentioned, this is something that we really need to get going with, obviously. So I'm going to make a motion that we send ordinance 2022-30 on the full council.
I'll second that motion. So we'll send that on to full council for Tuesday. And then, is there any other business?
I haven't got anything, though.
What time is it? I don't know. Is it 8 yet?
Almost.
Okay. I will send to you, I haven't spent the time to study them, either late yesterday or today, I can't remember. We got a notice of increased power costs. And it's broken out over the next several months, and I'll send it to you and we can talk about it. It has to do with the ascending cost of energy. So we're starting to see it creep up, and they're saying, now hear this, you're probably going to see higher power costs as the year rolls along.
Well, I was gonna say, I noticed that, and I've been told by several sources that, all the majors are in the process of preparing to raise their rates.
So
They're already went to, the PUCO, so it's like, okay, it's coming.
yeah, they'll have their own power cost adjusted.
Right, but again, indirectly, we're in that same category, so, I do have one question.
Yeah.
We budgeted for, this is kind of for the lighting out on 61.
Yeah.
I know this has not been the greatest time weather-wise and everything. Is there a timetable on that at all, Tom? Or,
It's gonna get done.
oh, I know, no, I just, I
I-
didn't know if you had anything.
Nah, I won't try to fudge it.
Because I was gonna say, the weather's not been, and to get heavy equipment out there to install and all that other stuff I understand all that, so I figured that there'd probably be some folks who might be listening that would.
I guess the guys, that happens a lot, the guys and gals that have to maintain the lights probably less enthusiastic than those of us. Well, that's a great idea.
Yeah,
So I think it's a this year's construction project, but I'll track it down and see which component is back ordered and all that.
well, see, that was gonna be my question, because with everything else out
Yep.
there, yeah.
So that is, it's in the works, I'll let you know, I don't wanna give you some date.
Oh, no, and I don't mean to put you on the spot or anything.
Yeah,
like
we haven't
that.
seen any sort of engineering drawings. I think we'll probably do it in-house.
I thought that's what we was gonna do with that.
It's in-house, I think it's just a matter of getting our hands on the materials.
Well, and that's kind of what I was wondering.
Transformers and arms, we don't keep a whole lot of inventory on those items, so. All right, I'll stop babbling. I'll let you know.
Okay.
Call
I
coming
appreciate it.
tomorrow, we'll make up a date then, okay?
Okay.
So our next meeting will be May 4th at 7 o'clock. And then I have a motion for adjournment.
And I will make that motion for adjournment.
And I'll second that at 7:57.